Jessica Molaskey. I'm a singer, I'm an actress, Broadway actress, jazz singer. I'm talking to Rabbi Sol Solomon on Dave's Gone By on UNC Radio.
Oh, shalom, shalom, my friends, my enemies. This is your beloved Rabbi Sol Solomon, the founder and spiritual leader of Temple Sons of Bitches in Great Neck, New York. And you know how I love theater people, and you know how I love music people. Well, we have one and the same on the phone with us this Saturday morning. Her name is Jessica Molaskey, and if you know that name, maybe it's because you've seen her in cabaret, maybe it's because you've seen her doing almost a dozen shows on Broadway, including Dream and Cats and some others, and maybe seen her with her husband because they are both swingers. Get your mind out of the gutter. I'm talking about playing swing music because she and John Pizzarelli perform quite often together. But if you want to see a different side of Jessica Molaskey, you can do that tonight. Unfortunately, you have to go to New Jersey to do it. But beyond that, imagine hearing an evening of Joni Mitchell music performed by Jessica Molaskey at the New Jersey Performing Arts Center's Victoria Theater in Newark, New Jersey. That is tonight. Jonathan Schwartz, a fellow radio person, is hosting. So please, we're going to talk Joni Mitchell, swing music, all kinds of music and theater with the delightful Jessica Molaskey. Shalom, Jessica.
Oh, shalom.
How you doing?
Rabbi, how are you?
Don't ask. You know, I'm Jewish. I've always got something wrong with me. But you're not Jewish, so you must be healthy as a horse.
No, I don't know, because, I just found out my grandfather's name was Israel Molaskey. That doesn't sound so Catholic to me.
Wait a minute. Really? Oh, maybe that. Where are your heritage from?
I think he got to Ireland and they said, you're Catholic, and he said, whatever you want.
Probably a good thing. Here, way back in the day, there was no Irish, no Jews. The signs were up all over the place. Back in Ireland, it was probably just no Jews. We're just not loved anywhere. But people...
Hal Prince used to always say to me, oh, you're one of those Irish Jews, I know it. Because he used to live in Ireland. He used to have a house in Dublin. And I said, well, I don't know. And then I found out my grandfather's name was Israel. So there you go.
There you go. Now, wait a minute. When did you work with Hal Prince? Was that Songs from a New World? Or no, when was that?
I actually worked with his daughter, Daisy, in Songs for a New World. No, I did a show called Parade at Lincoln Center.
Oh, of course, yes.
And then I did a show called 3, with the number 3, that was out of town. It was supposed to come in, and it was delightful.
Those were the one-act musicals, the guy in the chair, and there were a couple of others. Was that it?
Oh, you know your theater.
Well, I studied. What can I tell you? So which of those were you in?
I was in all 3 of them.
Oh, nice.
I was in all 3 of them. It was a wonderful piece. I don't know why somebody... We just lost some money at the last minute. We didn't come in with it. But Hal Prince is my hero. And he has become a good friend.
Oh, nice. So tell us a nice Hal Prince anecdote.
Oh, my gosh. I think I remember him talking about a little night music on the road and saying that to Stephen Sondheim, we need a song for her in the second act. They were already in performances. We need the song. Something for her to have a moment, the character. And so Stephen Sondheim went overnight and wrote the song, Send in the Clowns, and played it for them that morning.
That's a pretty famous story, but it is apparently true and amazing.
And he said I didn't get it. He said I didn't. Everybody was crying around me, and I didn't get it. But he said if everybody else is crying, I guess it must be good to do it.
Now, here's the question. You bring up this person that I've never heard of, Stephen Son something. Do you have any stories about him?
Well, he comes to see us at the Carlisle all the time.
Wow.
Over the years, Adam saw him at a party. Well, I've worked with him several times, but he once time said, because we started making these jazz records, and we would take his songs and sort of re-harmonize them and put the jazz chords in them, and then play them in jazz clubs or in jazz festivals like the Monterey Jazz Festival, and people would come up to me and say, what's that song about being sorry and grateful at the same time? That's amazing. Because a lot of times the jazz repertoire can be very limited. People don't go looking.
It's the same 20 or 30 standards unless you really goose it up, yeah.
Right, it's like Detour Ahead and Something Cool. That's what women especially sing. And so because I was such a fan of Sondheim, I thought, well, I'm going to start preaching the Sondheim gospel in places where it doesn't normally go. But one time he said to me, stop reharmonizing my songs or something.
Oh, really?
But then over time, he she just started to come see us, and last year we did this crazy swinging instrumental of Sweeney Todd that made him laugh, and he actually wrote us a letter this year and said thank you. It's very flattering.
Oh, you got to frame that thing. Wow.
But I got to frame that one.
When you first started, was it terrifying the first time you sang a Stephen Sondheim song in front of Stephen Sondheim?
Yeah, do you know what Richard Nixon looked like at the Nixon-Kennedy debate?
Yeah.
Just that little bit of sweat right there under your lips.
Well, I hope you didn't have 5 o'clock shadow. That would be... You need some depilatory there.
Yeah, terrifying. It's always terrifying singing for the composer. This week we sang for... We did 2 galas. One was for John Kander, and I sang all that jazz. And Cheetah Rivera was there. I was like, what am I doing? Why am I doing this? And then we sang for Ellen and Marilyn Bergman. We did a gala for them this week. So, yeah, it's always terrifying. Always makes me scared.
So you're pretty used to it, though, of having these high-level people in the... Here's the deal. Do you avoid eye contact? Do you make eye contact after the song? Do you kind of... Where's your gaze? Where's your focus?
Oh, you do a nice soft focus over everybody's head.
How long have you been singing?
And not including in my basement?
Not including shower, basement, agate, crawl space, yeah.
My mom worked at a radio station, a small radio station in Connecticut.
Oh.
Would bring home the scratched LPs. You know, that's when they had LPs. That's how old I am.
That's how old I am, too, alas, yes.
And I had a little, close and play record player.
Yes, I love those. Oh.
And I would just listen to Barbara Cook, and I listened to a little night music, and I fell in love with Stephen Sondheim, and I sang every night after dinner with my poor parents. God love them.
I was more listening to the demon rock and roll at that point.
But I listened to Joni Mitchell. That's how I became, and I fell in love with Joni Mitchell and Stephen Sondheim at the same time.
See, my problem was one time I mistook my close and play record player for an easy bake oven, and the results were neither tuneful nor delicious, I have to say. We're talking with Jessica Molaskey here in the neighborhood. But it's one thing to sing well and to sing along with Barbara Cook on your close and play and then be a kid, maybe in assemblies. How did you make the move into realizing, oh, I'm going to sing professionally? I was in college, and I called a place in St. Louis called the Muni Opera.
Oh, yes. They were having auditions in New York, and I was going out with a boy who lived in St. Louis. And I actually had the nerve to call the guy who ran the place at home and said, I would like to come to your theater this summer. And he said, I guess he thought I had such chutzpah that he said, okay.
Oh, chutzpah. You actually... Wait. Say that word again, please.
Did I say it like I'm from Connecticut?
Say it again.
Chutzpah.
Try the chuh.
Chutzpah.
There you go. There you got the chutzpah. Call the Muni owner and invite yourself. And he said, okay.
Yeah, and so I worked with a woman named Mary Wicks there. We did Oklahoma. Do you remember Mary Wicks? She was in every movie from the 40s. She was in The Man Who Came to Dinner. She had that long face. She was on the Lucille Ball shows when they did the ballet dancing. She was just a wonderful character actress, and she took a shine to me, and she got a production of Oklahoma was being done in New York, and she got me an audition, and I had one little piece of music crinkled up. I sang How Are Things in Guacamora, and I got it while I was going to school.
Well, you sang How Are Things in Guacamora in Oklahoma? That's a very strange production there.
Let me say it properly. How are things in Guacamora?
Guacamora. I say Guacamora. Actually hurts my kidneys when I do it, but it's worth it.
I sang that for the audition for Oklahoma, and I got it. So I got a Broadway show while I was going to school. And that's just how it started. And, after that, you just go one thing goes to another. Back then, you could go from one Broadway show to another. Now it's a little bit different.
Well, so wait, your first show was Oklahoma. It wasn't the Hugh Jackman revival. It was the...
It was a longer time. It was Christine Ebersole was in it, and it was actually Agnes DeMille actually revived it. I've been through DeMille.
Well, leave me the jokes. Okay, I'll do all the jokes.
I didn't even realize that was a joke.
Well, no. So do you have any thoughts on her directing a choreography? I can't say that word.
It was actually directed by Hammerstein's son, who's a lovely guy.
James or no? Which one?
Jimmy Hammerstein.
Jimmy. Okay, yeah.
And Agnes DeMille recreated her own work.
Whoa.
Yeah, it was pretty crazy.
Do you have any Agnes DeMille stories?
Yeah, when we got to Broadway, we went on the road for about 4 months, and she was resetting it on the Palace Theater stage, and she had a cane, and she would knock it on the ground when she tried to get people's attention. And she called me down. She said, you, with the striped shirt. She said, who hired you?
Oh, boy.
I said, I think it was you, Miss DeMille. But she would stop an entire rehearsal and say, "Can I speak to the prop man?" And she'd say, "Look at those picnic baskets. There's no rock candy in them. There's no pickled peats in there. They're light as a feather. I want rock candy."
Okay. But you know what? It's not Alzheimer's, it's verisimilitude.
That is attention to detail. God is in the detail.
Because if you ever watch people and, they're supposed to be carrying a heavy briefcase and they throw it around like a Nerf ball, you know that somebody's not paying attention to that detail. So she's really saying, those baskets, you're swinging them around. No, they're full of food.
We want them to be full of food.
Yeah. So after that, is that when you got an understudy gig in Cats?
No, I did Cats on and on. Oh, God. You're leading with all my strengths. I got into Cats, and Cats, it's funny, because I went to a wedding yesterday.
Mit Mazel?
Huh?
I said mit Mazel, Mazel Tov, to whoever got married.
It was a lovely Jewish wedding, actually, lovely Jewish.
Yes.
They had the chuppah and the glass and the whole beautiful thing. But I was there with some old friends, and Vicki Clark was there, who I did Cats with years ago, and we were just talking about all the people. I mean, the people who ended up doing so well who did that show. Like Robbie Marshall was in Cats when I did it.
Oh, wow.
Vicki was in it.
When you say Vicki Clark, you mean Victoria Clark, Tony winner from Titanic and blah, blah, blah. Okay, yes.
I mean, you can't believe how many people did it. I think I got in the show as an understudy, and then I ended up taking over one of the roles. And it was one of those kind of gigs. Les Miserables was the same kind of thing where I'd leave to do something like chess or something.
You need a job, and they let you wander back in. And
yeah, or else, I mean, literally, when I was in Les Miserables, I hadn't done Les Mis for like 2 years, and I was about to go into Tommy on Broadway.
Ooh.
And I was walking down the street, and the stage manager ran out of the stage door, grabbed me, and said, "Could you do the show tonight?" Because, like, literally, someone broke their leg, and another person had morning sickness and was having a baby. They didn't know it, and I literally walked on stage. I didn't know, like, all the faces were sort of like looked like the people that did it when I did it, but I didn't know any of them.
But this was Les Mis, right? Oh, because Cats would be easier.
That was a show like that where I came and went, over the course of several years. I would go and do it for 6 months and then go out and do something else. But it was nice to have those little home bases.
Well, in those two shows, with Les Mis and the turntable and everything going on, and Cats with wandering into the audience, and are there any cool, funny stories that happened to you or that you witnessed in doing those two big, epic musicals?
Well, I went into Les Mis and I went into Cats without ever having a rehearsal on stage. I mean, there's a thing in Cats called the swirl in the opening number that's just like, it's like you could die if you're not in the right place.
Oh, boy.
Yeah, I just remember, like, people just jostling me around, holding me, and just kind of pushing me. It was New Year's Eve, and I went on without a rehearsal. I was supposed to go in after the New Year, and they just said, "Can we throw you on?" And I said, "Yes." And I remember being in sort of shock and walking outside. It was snowing, and seeing, when you go on for someone and you're not in the playbill, they fill them with little pieces of paper that have your name on them.
Of course.
Yeah, for this performance, Jessica Molaskey will be playing the part of, and they could hear people, the revelers, in Times Square, because I was the Winter Garden, and then I just looked up Broadway, and my little name with wet footprints up.
Well, yeah. The highs and the lows of show business, it's all there, right there.
Yeah, I just got pushed around in a Broadway show in a cat suit.
There are worse ways to make a living. Not many. Hell, you can don a cat suit and walk through Times Square now and talk to Elmo. Same thing.
More money probably than I did at Cats.
Exactly. Now, another show that was both a high and a low, I am sure, was a musical review called Dream, which was probably a bad experience in some ways, but here's a leading question, but a very good one in some others for you. So tell.
I always say to my husband, who I met doing that show.
Yeah. Was he in the pit? No, he was on stage. He was doing the thing with the...
He was on stage, yes. He was one of the stars of the show. And I like to say that the run of that show was 9 of the most wonderful days of my life.
Well, yeah. Now, are there any Leslie Ann Warren stories?
I'm going to take the fifth on that.
Okay, fair enough. That was a big deal back then when it was running.
Trying to keep my karma intact for the rest of my life.
Wow, okay. Well, she's still alive. If she were dead, you could tell all the stories, but...
So there's a great book. A woman named Susan Schulman wrote a great book about stories about Broadway, and she has a whole chapter about Leslie Ann Warren, and it's hilarious.
Oh, yes. She was on the show last year. We had her. She talked about the book. She's a press agent, by the way, who was repping Dream when it was playing on Broadway. But the good part, as you said, even though it lasted a week, even though there were awful things in the press, you got to meet your husband, John Pizzarelli, the musician. How did he pick you up? What was his line?
Well, this was what happened was because we had a temperamental leading lady, the rehearsals would come to a absolute halt. We'd get there at 10 in the morning, ready to go, and something would happen, and there would be chairs that were being thrown, and we'd all and so we started getting closer and closer to the performance, and I went to the director and said, should I start taking what I'm going to be doing in the show responsible for that, so at least I don't crash and burn when we walk out in front of an audience? And he said yes.
Oh, boy. Oh,
and
man.
I had heard John Pizzarelli on The Tonight Show. I was doing Tommy at the San Francisco Opera, and I had a cute little apartment, and I was, after the show, making myself a little something to eat, and I heard this guy scatting with his guitar.
That sounds disgusting, but she's talking about singing, ladies and gentlemen. Just making sure we know what you mean by scat. Okay.
I thought most people know what scatting was.
No, yeah.
Okay, but anyway, I thought I was in the kitchen, so I didn't see him, and I thought, who is that person making that sound? And then I walked in, and I saw him, and I thought, oh, who is that person? He's actually rather attractive. So when they offered me the part in Dream, I said, who else is doing it? And they said, John Pizzarelli. I thought, well, how bad can it be if he's in it?
There you go.
I found out how bad it could be.
So did you approach him, or it just kind of naturally, let's do lunch kind of thing?
I was no dummy. I said, I'm going to hook myself to that train because that guy is playing all the right chords. I had to sing Skylark, and I had to sing Moon River, and so we would go into the basement, and,
I'm sure you would.
The director would say, just go, go, go. We worked out a couple of beautiful arrangements and would do them for the director, and he'd give us a thumbs up, and then John would say, I think we need to rehearse that one more time.
I'm sure he did. No, but also those were some of the nicest parts of that show, which was misbegotten in some ways. But when you would come out with John Pizzarelli, and it was sweet. It was great to hear those songs,
Right. Well, I just felt like there was a lot going on, so the simpler we could be, the better. And it was really just actually a matter of just trying to save my own can, if I can say that on the radio.
Yeah, of course you may say that.
I've heard you've said worse.
I have. Believe me. I don't want to say them now because you're a lady. Like Bruce Jenner, I might turn into a lady someday, so I don't want to
Just never know.
Precurse myself. But how long between Dream and you're actually getting married to John Pizzarelli?
Well, we've been together. This year we've been together 19. We met 19 years ago, and we married 17 years ago.
Oh, mit Mazel. And forgive me for not knowing off the top, but do you have kids? A kid?
Well, yes. I mean, John had a 4-year-old when I met him. He was divorced and with the 4-year-old, so we had an instant family there. And I've been Johnny's mom for a long time, and then we have a daughter who is a junior in high school.
Oh, mit Mazel. Now let me ask you. This is not just one parent in show business, but this is two different people who have to not just be in New York, but you guys got to tour and go places and do shows. So how do you raise a child, a toddler, teenager, when both parents have to go all over the place?
Well, I have been very creative in that way. I don't really go on the road that much. I made a pact to myself that if I was going to be a mom, I was going to stay home. Mostly I've traveled in the summer or on the weekends. But otherwise, I've stayed in New York, and that's one of the reasons why I don't work as much in the theater anymore, because basically there are very few Broadway shows that start in New York now. You have to go on the road for
months.
Months, yeah, and I've just not been able to do that, and I feel very happy with that decision, because she's a great kid.
And John can go and do his thing and makes, I'm sure, a very good living playing the music, doing galas and clubs and what he does.
Yeah, and, I've got one more year, and then I can go wherever I want.
So are you going to get back trying into the Broadway gig or just do music?
It's not like I have gone away from the Broadway. I've done, the last Broadway show I did was 4 years ago, but I'm in the process of doing, always doing readings and workshops, and there's one show that may come in next year, so it's always a big May, But no, I'd love to do a Broadway show, because you know what?
What?
You know how much college costs? $65,000 a year.
Well, tell your kid to get a scholarship. Perhaps, is she talented? Can she sing? Does she?
She's a very talented musician. She plays guitar beautifully. And she sings and she writes songs, and She goes to school for that for 4 hours a day on top of everything else, but I don't know if that's what she wants to end up doing, but we'll see. She certainly has a gift.
Now, here's a question. You and your husband do club gigs together. He backs you when you do galas. You've done record albums with him backing you. You have a radio show that you do, was it once a week?
Yep.
So how do you deal with the fact that here's a man you've been married to for 19 years, you have a terrible fight in the morning, and then you have to go on the radio together? How do you do that?
Well, we always sort of said we wouldn't let the work get in the way of our relationship. Like, let's not get in a fight because of work. And I love working with him. There's nobody I would rather go on the stage with. I sort of like surfing on the same surfboard. You got to be with the right person.
Oh, of course.
So far, so good. That hasn't happened.
Oh, knock wood. I don't mean even having a fight about work. I mean just having a marital human being kind of spat. But then you have to go work.
I guess, we get to do our show whenever we want to, because we do it at our kitchen table, literally. And so I would say we usually just do it when we're in a spirited mood.
Among the people, I think your most recent show, you got to interview Barbara Cook, whom you mentioned listening to when you were a kid. Who are some of the other folks that you've talked to and had guests on your show?
Oh, my God. We had Regis on. We had Liza on. We had Margaret Whiting was wonderful. We've just had some really great Karen Allison, wonderful jazz people.
And people should know that if they want to listen to this, it's online. They can go to Radio Deluxe with John Pizzarelli. Yeah. They should put your name in there, too, but it would just be too long a URL.
No, I know.
Radio Deluxe with John Pizzarelli. Plus, also, you have your own website, which is JessicaMolaskey.net. That's MOLASKEY. Jessica Molaskey.net. And we want to remind people that you are playing tonight at the New Jersey Performing Arts Center's Victoria Theater doing Portrait of Joni, all Joni Mitchell songs. What gave you the idea to do basically a full evening of Joni Mitchell, besides that you listened to her and a bunch of other people when you were a kid?
And my husband's going to be playing with me as well, and my daughter is performing with us.
Oh, a family affair. How lovely.
So it started because we did a Carlisle hotel every year for a month or 6 weeks, whatever. And we started out doing, traditional standards. And then every once in a while I'd say, let's see if we can slip in Joni Mitchell or Paul Simon or James Taylor. And people, every time I sang a Joni Mitchell song, people would come up to me and say, oh, my God, thank you. Because really the demographic there, we get a little bit of a younger crowd than used to go there. We get people in their late 40s, 50s.
Well, because the people who wanted to hear Gershwin, Schwartz, and Dietz are from one generation, and people who grew up with Paul Simon and Joni Mitchell and Neil Young, that's already 20 years difference.
Well, our point is that if a song is a good song, and I think what happened in the 60s and the 70s is these singer-songwriters, especially someone like Joni, she had such an idiomatic way of singing that when you strip that away and you actually look at the songs, they're just as beautiful and just as worthy to sing next to Gershwin. And so that's what we did, and people always thanked me. And the people from the American Songbook series at Lincoln Center approached me about doing a Joni night, and I was thrilled to do it. And what we did was we did actually swing some things. I mean, we took certain songs like Raised on Robbery from Court and Spark and made it sound like it was a Peggy Lee song. And we have a bunch of wonderful Brazilian musicians playing with us, and we did a lot of bossa nova versions of like Circle Game. And so we really put them in a jazz vernacular, and they work. And the songs are like little one-act plays. They have a real beginning and middle and end, a song like Marcy or The Last Time I Saw Richard.
Oh, I love that song.
And to me, that song is a play. And as being an actor, I just felt like the material really suits whatever strengths I have.
And also, Joni Mitchell is not from the other side of jazz. I mean, she started as a folkie, started putting jazz into her folk music, and then really crossed the line towards jazz. She did a whole Charlie Mingus album herself.
Right.
But it sounds like you're sticking with mostly the older folky material, but jazzing it up.
No, we do Dry Cleaner from Des Moines, which was from the Mingus album. Joni Mitchell was in love with Lambert, Hendricks, and Ross before she was in love with the Beatles.
Well, she did Twisted. That's on one of her...
Oh, and that's how I discovered Annie Ross, was through Joni Mitchell, and that brought a whole other world to me as a kid. Now, of course, in my old age, I'm writing bebop vocally songs to, all kinds of crazy old jazz records.
So will there be a Joni Mitchell album in your... Unfortunately, there won't be a Joni Mitchell album in Joni Mitchell's immediate future, but could there be one in yours?
When we originally did this last year at Lincoln Center, I had a great guy named Larry Goldings play piano and organ. He's an extraordinary guy, and he's been a friend for a while. And he's been out with James Taylor forever, and he's on his new record. So I'm hoping to get him. They're coming to New York in the summer, and I'm hoping to get him to come into the studio with me because the arrangements are too good.
Absolutely, would love to hear it. Much as I like jazz and the standards, I did grow up in that era, and I want to hear the jazz versions of songs from the 60s and 70s, with all the respect, even more than the 50s and 40s and 30s, and of course the 1838s, which was a wonderful year for jazz, by the way.
Well, I'm going to tell you a story. I hope my husband doesn't get mad at me, but he's in the other room.
Okay.
This is a great story.
Okay.
My husband just made an amazing record. About 8 months ago, the doorbell rang, and a man hand-delivered a letter from Paul McCartney that said, "What do you think about making a record, a jazz record of my post-Beatles songs?" Because John had done a Beatle record that was pretty much reviled by most people, and now everyone looks at it and says it's really good. So we went into the studio and put down, No More Lonely Nights and Silly Love Songs and like bossa novas and beautiful jazz versions, and Michael McDonald did a song with us, and it's just extraordinary. And he just signed off on it. Paul just signed off on it last week and said go. So hopefully that'll be out in the next 4 months or so. But that one you got to listen to because it's really great.
Oh my God! No, it's just I love this. You get a letter from Stephen Sondheim. You get a hand-delivered letter from Paul McCartney. Mike, what other legends have you actually met in person and either sung with or just had a little moment with?
Well, we did. John did a record with Paul, a record of standards called "Kisses on the Bottom." That he
Oh yes. Oh, he was on that. Oh, I didn't realize.
And John played guitar. Yeah, and Dinah Krall played piano.
I should probably ask him, but does he have any Paul McCartney anecdotes or stories or what he was like?
Yeah, you'll have to talk to him when the record comes out.
Yeah, well, fair enough. That's a deal.
Yeah, but I mean, honestly, I've really gotten to meet all my heroes, with the exception of Joni Mitchell, and I don't know if I'd want to, because I would hate to wreck it. But listen to this story, though. Last year, when Larry Goldings played for me, he had to get on a plane and fly right afterwards because he was playing a private party at David Geffen's house.
Ooh.
And he walked in the door, and Joni Mitchell was standing there, and he said, "Oh my God, I just played a concert last night of your music." And she said, "Well, what did you play?" And he said, "Oh, here." And he had the playbill in his pocket. And she looked at it and said, "Oh, that's interesting. Oh, that's interesting. Oh, how nice." That was it. So,
oh, good. I'm glad she was nice. I'm glad she was...
That was my brush with Joni.
Okay, hey, that's something. That is something. And you know what else is... I didn't even mention this amongst your many credits and your Broadway stuff and the other things that you did, but you played Sister Bertha in that millions of people watched this, the Sound of Music live TV show that they had with Carrie Underwood and Audra McDonald, and Laura Benanti was in it. Any stories about that, of having to do a live broadcast like Peter Pan in the old days?
We were just talking, I saw Audra was at this wedding that I went to yesterday, too.
Oh, wow.
We were just talking about it yesterday, like what a trip it was. It was like going up in space with people. That's the only thing I could think of. Because literally, and we started it, that Audra and I, out of thin air with the Latin, and the guy, his stage manager, standing right next to you going, 5 seconds to live air, 4 seconds to live air. You want to say, could you stop saying the live part? It was so much fun.
Oh, good.
I wouldn't have had any more responsibility. I mean, she had to sing Climb Every Mountain on live television for 19 million people. She came back in to the dressing area and sat down and just put her head down between her legs, because that's freaking crazy hard song to sing anyway. It is a mountain, that song. So I just had to be a cute nun.
Well, okay, I've done that, and it was weird because I had the beard still, but I managed. Yeah.
Rabbi Sister Mary Alice.
There you go. Were there any things that didn't get on, any backstage mishaps or moments when you worried, this is gonna...
No, it pretty much went off without a hitch. There was one gentleman, I won't say who it was, a lovely guy who, as we say in the theater, walked on the set and went up right at the very end.
Oh, it happens. Oy.
Just got shark eyes. And somehow they got back on track, and they cut that out for the West Coast. Because they basically, everything was live that you saw on the East Coast, but we did a live run through the night before just in case something horrible.
Yeah, if Sister Agnes dropped the F-bomb for no particular reason, that would have been a thing they would have cut for the West Coast.
Exactly.
Because Sister Agnes, she's got a mouth on her.
She's got a mouth on her. Dirty.
The person we're talking to, Jessica Molaskey, has a wonderful mouth on her from which to sing. Oh, that sounds horrible, but you know what I'm saying. She sings beautifully, both with and without her husband. Remember that her whole family, her husband, her daughter, are going to be there tonight at the New Jersey Performing Arts Center's Victoria Theater. That's at 1 Center Street in Newark, and she's doing a whole show. You're probably going to slip in a couple of other things in the encore, but I imagine it's all Joni. Up till that point, Joni Mitchell songs. Jonathan Schwartz, the radio guy, is hosting. I wish I could be there. I wish I could see it. Let me ask one last question, please. For the delightful and fun Ms. or Mrs. Wait, you're keeping your Molaskey name. You're not like Mrs. Pizzarelli, right?
Well, I thought that going from Molaskey to Pizzarelli was a lateral move.
At least you didn't hyphenate. You never fit that on an envelope.
Forget it. They'd say, God bless you.
Do you have a long middle name?
Cecilia.
Oh, forget it. Jessica Cecilia Molaskey Pizzarelli? Good Lord.
No, literally, my mother's family is all from Ireland, as we spoke about. And her twin sister's name was Una Doyle. And I always thought if I had a little girl, I would name her Una. That would my whole life long. Oh. Well, I married John Pizzarelli, and I realized I couldn't do that to a person. Una Pizzarelli. It'd be like you're ordering.
Una Pizzarelli, do a, calzone. Yeah, I get it.
Una Pizzarelli, do a calzone.
And plus, if you ever had to introduce her to, like, at a party to Ima Sumac and Uma Thurman, that would be a very difficult. Ima, just terrible thing.
Terrible.
Yeah, it didn't work for Letterman, and it just didn't work for me either. Last question for Jessica Molaskey.
Am I your best guest you've ever had on the show?
You are up there. You are definitely a delight. I mean, we've had some pretty marvelous guests, but you are up there. I would say you're top 3. So you're jockeying for like top 1 now, depending on how you answer these 2 further questions, because I just remembered another one.
Okay.
First of all, you met Miles Davis.
No. Oh, I did. How did you know that?
Well, I do you need to do your research. I know more about you than you do.
I did meet Miles Davis.
So obviously it was not a memorable...
No, it's so funny that you should say that. I was like, I kind of blocked it out. I worked, I was at Saturday Night Live. I used to do when I first moved to New York, my girlfriend Christine Ebersol was for one season she was on it.
Right, yeah.
And she got me, I would do jingles, when they would do the fake commercials, like when Mick Jagger turned 40 or 45 or something, we did the middle age of rock and roll. It was like, hey, you get out of my yard, stuff like that. And and Miles Davis, it was the first time he came back on television, and he played that song. I can't remember the name of it. Anyway, he just sort of wandered the hallways with his trumpet, and I got to meet him.
I imagine he was vaguely straight, sober, maybe not.
I don't know. I think he was, because I think he'd come back from a long series of, and got married, and but he was still, you could tell there was just somebody who was
out there, who was on another plane, both chemically and even without chemicals, he would have been out there on another dimension. But since you mentioned Saturday Night Live, do you have any stories from those crazy years?
Well, I only worked on it one season, and I wasn't it was just sort of in the background. We just, I think I sang background for something once. They throw me in a scene, drinking a cup of coffee. But I just got to watch it. It was a pretty crazy time then in the 80s. There was a lot of drugs, and I was like a good little sweet girl from Connecticut, and I was shocked by some of that, and
So you could tell, you could tell that they were doing it. Was that open?
Oh, no, they weren't trying to hide it. No.
Oh, okay.
There was heroin, there was everything. And
how do you go on stage unless you're a musician? How the hell do you do a comedy sketch when you're on heroin?
I remember some people behind the scenes. I don't want to name any names.
I'm just trying to imagine, if Abbott and Costello got into some heroin, what that would have been like. Yeah,
I couldn't even have a glass of wine and go on stage.
I know. What's the guy's name on second base? Yeah. No, I'm asking. What am I asking? Who's where? Okay. There's a comedy bit in there. I'm not doing it well, but if I work on it, I could get
But
there.
with heroin, I don't think.
All right, now you've just pushed up yourself to the second best guest we've ever had.
Because I talked about heroin, I have no. All I know is I played the heroin addict in an opera, and
What the hell opera was it? It was not La Boheme, wait.
well, I call it an opera. I think of it as an opera. It's a piece that was written by Ricky Ian Gordon. I don't know if you know him.
Oh, yeah, okay.
A play about his family. Someone wrote a play about his family years ago. His sister, who started Rolling Stone and was this brilliant woman, she was one of the first women to go to Yale, and turned into this hopeless heroin addict. And so I did some arias upside down and a good snooze. It was good.
I hope there was tap dancing.
I find his work.
Yeah, oh, wow. Okay, that was a downer. And that leads us to, unfortunately, like my last question is sort of...
Five on the list.
Is what, sorry?
I just went backwards.
Yeah, you slid down to 4 again. But maybe this will push you up, except it's a thing that you feel strongly about. A lot of people like Michael Feinstein and folks in the theater and that kind of standard singing game feel about the way performers sing and appear on American Idol, and the way they treat songs there. What is your problem?
My problem is and I feel it in Broadway. I go to see things. I went to see a show last year that had beautiful standards in it, and everybody was yelling. And I was like, why is everybody yelling at me? And why is that good singing? I'm no problem with American Idol. As a matter of fact, for years we would huddle in front of the TV and watch it when my daughter was a little girl, and it was a weekly event that felt very old-fashioned. But I just don't understand why everybody has to scream at everyone. Because to me, when someone starts to yell at me, I back off and shut down. And the minute someone draws me in, everyone was singing at this wedding yesterday, Audra McDonald and Kelly O'Hare, and
wait a minute, who the hell is getting married that all these show people showed up? Who's the mazel tov? Who got married?
Ted Sperling. You know who Ted Sperling is?
Is he a musical director?
He's a musical
Conductor, okay.
Presently doing King and I on Broadway.
Oh.
Really responsible for making sure that, like South Pacific had that gorgeous, huge orchestra at Lincoln Center a couple of years ago. Just impeccable. He was involved in the original Sunny in the Park with George and falsettos and a million great things over the years, and he got married.
Oh, Mazel McClick. Because at first he's like, Vicki Clark was there, okay, and then suddenly Audra killed you. It's like if they dropped a nuclear bomb on that wedding, Broadway would have no singers left.
Everybody was sang, and everyone was weeping because it was so beautiful. Everyone sang just like George Gershwin, Our Love Is Here to Stay. I mean, it was just so beautiful. And so that's all I have to say about the American Idol singing. Just stop yelling. Everybody stop yelling at me.
Well, if I stopped yelling, I'd lose my career. My career is built on yelling, but I'm not trying to sing yell.
I find it rather appealing coming from your end. I don't know why. But
you won't find anything appealing coming from my end. That's why I have the proctologist later in the week. But last question.
Anyway.
But anywho, Jessica Molaskey, people might not know, you've got these albums out, some of them now on PS Classics is the label, and you're with John Pizzarelli, and you sing the Joni songs and the classics and the standards, but people might not know that you guys also write original songs. So what's the favorite song that you have co-composed or written yourself with your husband, John?
We wrote a song called The Girl with His Smile in My Eyes that I wrote after September 11th, and did you say?
Well, I mean, September 11th, Wega Drag, I tried to have an up question, a happy question to go out, and then you're like, September 11th. It's like,
Anyway, I think that's a really nice song, and I don't know, we've written some other fun songs.
Oh, yeah, that's a joyful one. Oh, the Arabs are flying into the towers, doodly-doo-doo-doo. No, I don't know. It's horrible. Anywho, please, if I haven't given you enough reasons...
You know what I love about what your gig is? That you say anything, you can say something really, really horrible, and then you go, anywho.
Anywho covers a multitude of sins.
It absolves you.
In fact, in synagogue, when I take confession, because we have a very unusual synagogue.
I can imagine.
I get murderers, I get child molesters, rapists. They come in, and they're like, well, I did this, and they're buried here. Anywho, and completely absolved.
Completely absolved.
Just that word does it. Well, you are commanded, therefore, I'm doing a godlike thing now, you are commanded to go to the New Jersey Performing Arts Center, ladies and gentlemen, tonight at Center Street in Newark, New Jersey, njpac.org for more information and to buy tickets, to hear Jessica Molaskey being backed by her husband, John Pizzarelli, and her daughter, right?
Yes.
Playing the guitar. What's her name?
Maddie.
Maggie Pizzarelli at the NJ Pack tonight. Also, go to Radio Deluxe with JohnPizzarelli.com to hear their radio program. The most recent is with Barbara Cook. Do you have the archives on there too, or just the most recent?
I don't know. I think there's a most recent. We're also on Mixcloud. I think you could go Mixcloud.
Check out JessicaMolaskey.net. Last question. After tonight, what are you doing next over the next month or 2 or 3?
I'm trying to get my daughter into college.
Oh, boy. Okay. Is it going to be like an Oberlin or a Berkeley thing? Is she going for music, or?
She doesn't want to go conservative, but she Oberlin's on the thing. She's very interested in Brown University. I don't know if we'll see if they'll be interested in her.
Oh, I'm sure that with that kind of parentage, they ought to be. With those genes that she's got from you guys, I'm sure. Well, wear your jeans, wear your best clothing tonight at NJ Pack to see Jessica Molaskey doing Portrait of Joni. Thank you for painting a wonderful portrait of your life with us here in the neighborhood. I would say you're the number 1 guest, but I'm going to keep you at number 2, so we have you back at some point, so you have something to fight for.
See, maybe my husband will come on and he'll be the number 1.
We would be honored. That would be wonderful.
He's pretty funny.
Well, you're number 2 in my... No, I shouldn't say that.
I don't want to be number 2.
My gastronomical... Yeah, no, you're number 1.5 with a bullet. How's that?
Okay, I'll take that with a bullet.
Jessica Molaskey, blessings to you. Thank you so much for being with us today.
For joy, thank you.
Shalom.